Welcome back, Mando.
Oh, greetings, Bucketheads. Mavar Tigar. Welcome to our 298th Lost and Found episode of Mandivision. I am your host, Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. We're so glad you're here. Make sure you're reaching out to us on the socials at Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram, and Blue Sky, where it's just Mandivision. Email the show, mandivisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. Welcome back, Bucketheads. We're here for another exciting installment of our Star Wars Rebels rewatch series. And it's a good one. A nice little two-parter as Season 2 continues to deliver the goods. I'm so fired up for it. All right. With that being said, I don't have a lot of Star Wars to get into this week, or for this episode, really. You know, the new comics have started. The Kylo Ren comic book is out. What else? There's another new writer on the Rey movie. It's all happening. We'll see what comes of it. But in the meantime, we have Rebels to rewatch. And I think we should just focus on this fun. All right. So, that being said, I feel like it's just A-okay if we get into the episode particulars. If you're ready. This is Star Wars Rebels, Season 2, Episode 3, The Lost Commanders. Original air date, October 14th, 2015. This episode is directed by Dave Filoni, directed by Sergio Paez, written by Matt Mishnovitz. Our primary cast for this week, Taylor Gray is Ezra Bridger, Vanessa Marshall is Harrison Dula, Freddie Prinze Jr. is Kanan Jarrus, Tiara Sakaar is Sabine Wren, Steve Blum as Zeb Orielos, Dave Filoni is Chopper, D. Bradley Baker is Admiral Constantine and the Clone Troopers, David Oluwelo is Adjian Kallus, Ashley Eckstein is Ahsoka Tano, and Keone Young as Commander Sato. All right, that being said, listen, I read the plots, and if there was any sort of mystery of what this episode is, the plot's going to tell it to you right now. The Rebels run into Captain Rex and his gang on a desert planet. Hits the nail right on the head, friends. All right, let's go ahead and get into the episode. Are you ready? Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off. You're going to have to relocate the covert. This is the way. This is the way.
So some things to note in this first new episode. In this episode of the show, we have the first appearance of a new color scheme for Sabine's armor. We also have a return of Rex, Wolf, and Gregor to the Star Wars fold. This episode also features a lovely ode to Jaws. So let's just get into it, my friends. Back with the remains of the Phoenix Squadron and the fleet. The small but excited Rebel fleet. Admiral Sarto, Hera, and Ezra decide it's time to find themselves a base. Ahsoka, who's also hanging out in the room, suggests that an old friend from the Clone Wars might have some ideas because he has extensive knowledge of the Outer Rim territories and all the Separatist base and pirate bases and a couple of Mandalorian hangouts, all the hot spots. He has an extensive knowledge, and he would be an asset. Ahsoka states that they've lost contact with each other recently, so she's a little unsure of where to find him. But there's been rumors that he's in the Silo sector, and so she equips the Spectres with the head of a tactical droid to aid in finding Rex. Okay, I don't know why. I'm not going to pretend that it's a surprise that it's Rex, okay? Because I don't really think it was much of one. So let's just say what it is, all right? They're going to go find Rex, and they're going to try to bring him back. At the very least, they're going to get some information from him. and they're going to use a tactical droid head to do so. What I really like in the episode is Ahsoka having to urge Kanan that he will have to trust Rex. Don't give in to sort of his natural inclination to be fearful of what he is going to find out is a clone. The clones that he witnessed killing his Jedi Master when he was a young Padawan himself. So obviously, he will have feelings upon seeing Rex in a group of clones. And Ahsoka urges him to fight those urges, to fight against that, and to trust her and trust Rex. Easier said than done, my friends. So our friends arrive at Sealos. The Ghost has hyperdrive issues, which will prevent Hera and Chopper from going to the surface of the planet. They stay in orbit to address the hyperdrive issues. So they take the Phantom down to the planet. They plug in the tactical droid head, which begins saying 7567, 7567 over and over and over. And they zero in on Rex, in my opinion, pretty darn easily. So, and that's when we have our standoff, right? Kanan doesn't trust the clones. Wolf thinks that Kanan's there for revenge on the Jedi. And it's not until Ezra name drops Ahsoka that things begin to cool off a little bit. It gets heated. Weapons are drawn at one point. But it's cool. It's cool. Ezra soothes it out. And Rex isn't looking for a fight either. But you can tell that Wolf still has some issues from the Clone Wars. Serious trust issues. Doesn't want to be found out by the Empire, right? Has some very big concerns about there. Gregor, we find, rocking that T-shirt from the episode that he was working when he was working in that kitchen during the D-Squad episodes. Yeah, he's rocking that one. And again, it was another one of those moments too where I think we thought Gregor sort of sacrificed himself at a certain point to help D-Squad escape, but evidently not. Evidently, at some point, Rex finds Gregor and they link up again, and Gregor is kind of off his rocker a bit. But he's not spoiling for a fight either. He just wants to go catching Joopas. That's his thing. He wants to go slinging for Joopas. And that's what we're going to do in this episode, basically. But before that, we get into a very interesting conversation where Rex says that the Emperor had retired the clones. And it's kind of vague in a lot of the way it's delivered. And that's simply because at the time, we didn't really know what that meant. The writers didn't know what that meant either. I think they thought it was going to be an area for exploring. So I think they kind of kept it open. Obviously, the Bad Batch has come along and filled in a lot of the gaps. But you also have to remember, too, there wasn't a final season of the Clone Wars yet. So when Rex drops the line about serving with Ahsoka Tano from the Battle of Christophsis to the Siege of Mandalore, we hadn't seen the Siege of Mandalore yet. We were just like, what, the Siege of Mandalore? That sounds awesome. And obviously they had been building towards it. But, yeah, we hadn't gotten to see it just yet. So all these things were sort of teased. And it's cool to get those teasers, but now we've gone back. We have the advantage of knowing the Bad Batch, knowing that story, and knowing the process by which the Empire moved on from the clones. And it's not a nice one. We know that. We've documented it on our Bad Batch series watch. But yeah, it's interesting to watch these episodes where those things weren't really in place yet, and hear Rex talk about events that weren't really fleshed out at that point creatively. So as I said, Rex seems interested in helping. Gregor doesn't want to get involved. And we find out that Gregor's kind of been up to no good. Not necessarily intentionally, like in a bad, malicious way, but in a, I'm trying to protect us kind of way. Like, we don't want to get involved in any Jedi because the Empire's hunting Jedi, and we don't want the Empire seeing more old clones laying around. And apparently we find out later on that Gregor has a history of sort of delusionally reaching out to the Empire and making contact for various claims. So he doesn't want to get involved. And like I said, Gregor just wants to... did I get the names mixed up? I said Wolf doesn't want to get involved. Rex wants to help. And Gregor wants to sling for Joobas. And he's going to use Zeb as his bait. And that's sort of like our centerpiece of this episode, which is where it turns into a Jaws tribute. But we have to cut to the Empire first, right? Because, again, one of the clones is ratted to the Empire, so a probe droid is dispatched. And I guess we're supposed to be buying to the mystery of which clone ratted out to the Empire. Was it the insane Gregor, or was it the fearful one of the Empire named Gregor? Oh my gosh, I keep saying it. Was it the fearful one named Wolf? I apologize. I think I'm tripping over. I just want to say the name Gregor a lot. I keep saying Gregor when I mean to be saying Wolf, and I apologize profusely. Wolf is the one ratting them out. Wolf is the one who doesn't want to get involved. Wolf is the one who thought Kanan was there to avenge the Jedi. That needs to be clear. And hopefully it is to all listeners. Oh my goodness gracious. All right, so we're going to go Jooba hunting with Zeb, and it's a lot of fun. And it's, again, if you're a fan of Jaws, you will recognize some of the musical cues that are very familiar to that film. A lot of the way it's sort of paced and shot out is very familiar to the opening of when the orca first goes out to pursue Jaws, right? And they're shooting the barrels at the shark, and you got Quint on the captain as the captain, and the ATTE is sort of like the orca, the ship, and it's a whole thing. And I do love the fact that they're sort of living in an old ATTE. It's a lot of fun. It's really neat the way they sort of have turned it into like their own version of a mobile home, like a Winnebago, but very appropriate for soldiers of the Clone Wars. So a very cool aesthetic on there that I really enjoyed seeing. One of the things I really like about this episode and the next episode as well is sort of like the way they go back and they talk about the Clone Wars. And we're seeing 20 something years down the road now, 15 years something down the road, I believe actually. The effect it still has on people, the trauma that it caused in people, and Kanan in particular. And again, we're seeing Rex and Gregor and Wolf, and they are clones who removed their chip, who didn't turn on their Jedi, who by all accounts acted nobly throughout the conflict. But it's hard for Kanan to separate that, the trauma that he witnessed, watching his Jedi Master be killed, and then having to go on the run from those clone troopers again. And these are people, as Kanan illustrates through the episode. These are troopers that they fought with for years throughout the Clone Wars, and who the Jedi tried their best to take care of and be loyal to, and vice versa. And then they were betrayed, and Kanan still feels that betrayal very, very deeply. So I sort of like the way he has to process his emotions, and the way he's sort of learning to not hold Wolf, Gregor, and Rex accountable for those actions of those particular clone troopers by witnessing and overhearing the interactions that Rex is having with Ezra. Ezra is taking a shine to Rex pretty quickly. And, again, Rex is a character that we all know and love, and he's a good person, a good man. And Kanan is being forced into seeing that. And it does come around. It eventually does. And Kanan recognizes that and is able to separate these clones from those clones. And again, it's a bit of a process for these 2 episodes for Kanan to make that journey. But, he keeps getting these little reminders, these little moments, again, as he hears Ezra talking, as he hears Rex talking, that sort of force him to confront things. He also has a really nice chat with Hera, who's up in orbit, trying to get the Ghost repaired so they can all get out of there at some point. And she points out to him, she reminds him, it's like, hey, the clones did a lot of good during the Clone Wars as well. They saved a lot of people's lives, hers included. And whether we don't know if she's specifically referring to the events of the clone seasons, of the early seasons of the Clone Wars when the Jedi and the clones try to break the blockade over on Ryloth, or if it's in the Bad Batch when they're there, when the Batch is there to save her father, Sham Syndulla. It doesn't get into the specifics, but the clones were very involved in Ryloth when Hera was a very, very young age. So in her mind, a lot of the clones are heroes. They were there to help. They saved many, many lives. And so she's helping remind Kanan of the good that they did. Yes, there was that bad thing, but remember, that chip is a real thing. And I think, Kanan's had a hard time putting that all on the chip, and that they were controlled and that they were forced to do these things. And Hera is another voice to remind him that it's not as clear-cut as he wants it to be, that it's not just the way he remembers it. There's a lot more to the conflict and to the tragedy of the clones than he's willing to admit. So we catch the Jooba. It's a big Jooba. It's a huge Jooba. World's biggest Jooba. Biggest Jooba I've ever seen in my life. I can say that honestly. And our heroes are going to stick around. They're going to eat the Jooba because, hey, Zeb was eaten by the Jooba. Now he wants to eat the Jooba. And that's what's going to happen. But this probe droid is probing around, doing proby things. And he's a very invasive probe. He just enters, goes into things, starts poking around, pushing buttons, and eventually is discovered. It is discovered that one of the clones, Wolf, has betrayed the Jedi and the Rebels to the Empire, and they have to stop the probe. Well, Rex stops the probe, and I think begins to begrudgingly win Kanan's approval and support. But it's too late, because we all know that once the probe is there, it has begun. The Empire is coming. And that's basically where this episode stops. There's another nice chat. Again, I mentioned the chats that Kanan has been overhearing between Ezra and Rex, and there's a really good one towards the end of the episode, right before they do all the probe stuff, where they talk about leadership and morality. And again, it's a really illuminating conversation for Ezra and for Rex. Again, this is like another mentor person for Ezra, and if we are going to continue with sort of like the family building dynamic that is Rebels, this sort of surrogate family that Ezra has now put around himself. Rex is obviously like the grandfather, right? He's the wizened old grandfather who has stories from yesteryear that and the wisdom to impart to a young person like Ezra. And it's a really sweet scene. I really enjoyed it quite a bit, and we see more of that in the next episode between Rex and Ezra as well. So really strong bond forming between those two characters, and really a nice opening for a little two-parter here that kind of brings Rex and the clones back into the fold here for Rebels. Because again, I remind you, at the time, again, Clone Wars was canceled. We didn't have an official conclusion to it, and we weren't really sure of the status of the clones post Revenge of the Sith. Like, we really didn't know a lot of the fallout for the transition from the Republic to the Empire. We didn't know a lot of these things. So this is them beginning to flesh this out a little bit more, to give us a little bit more context and history. So it's a nice episode in that regards. And now we can look back at the episode since shows like The Bad Batch have come out, and since various comics and novels and things like that have helped kind of color in more of this era, this timeline, this period. And yeah, really, really cool stuff. And I can't wait to talk to you more about the next part of the Rebels rewatch, which is part 2 of this little mini arc in the middle of season 2. Well, more towards the beginning of season 2, but you know what I mean when I say that. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. This is an 8-bucket episode. Easy peasy, 8 buckets. Solid stuff, very entertaining. Bringing back the clones, showing Ezra and Rex bonding, Kanan confronting some of his traumas from the Clone Wars. Golden stuff. Really big fan of it. And with that being said, we're gonna close up and get out of here. I neglected to mention at the beginning of the show, I sort of glossed over Star Wars news. And that was a mistake on my part, because I didn't acknowledge that it has been confirmed that there will be a Bad Batch book coming out, Sanctuary. So if you are into the clones and into the Bad Batch in particular, get ready. New book coming out. It's going to be exciting. I think it's Alexander Freed is writing this one, who did at least one of the Battlefront novels. I think the first one, if not the second. And I'm excited because, again, more Bad Batch is always a good thing in my opinion. I feel like that was a series that was cut tragically short, but maybe that was just a story they had to tell. But I do feel like there was more with the Batch that we could have covered. But we'll talk about that another time. All right, my friends. So, reminder again, check us out on the socials at Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram, MandoVision at Blue Sky. Email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. And go out there, my friends, and be great Star Wars fans. Take care of each other, be supportive of each other, kind and inclusive, and open to other opinions, even if they don't agree with yours. You know, it's okay. It's a great big world out there. We get all like Star Wars in our own way. We'll be back next week, friends, for another exciting installment of our Star Wars Rebels rewatch. But remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
I find that answer vague and unconvincing.